All right. We back. We are back. Y'all let me know if you got a good feed this time. We want to make sure that everything is on point. I don't need no headaches, y'all. I got enough of those. Y'all let me know now so we can make sure we got everything we need here. I want to make sure we don't have any more glitches in the matrix. All right. So, for those of you who have returned, I see you, Val. I see you, Riri. Okay. I'm going to give it a couple of minutes and let everybody come back into the feed. In the meantime and in between time, we'll play a little moon music. Cynthia, how are you this evening? I see you, Alex. Is that better? Y'all give me some thumbs up if the feed is better this time. Make sure we got everything running nice and smooth. I guess not. I don't see no thumbs. All right. Y'all come on back into the feed and check me out. We're gonna get it done this time. All right, fantastic, man. All right, so let's get back to this conversation at hand. Now, as I was saying, we have a tendency to operate in the means by which we are or have become accustomed. And sometimes the way we do things is it's a condition. It's conditioning. It's like anything else we've done from our youth and as we came up and we learned to do things, the way we were taught. I firmly believe that every child, when they come into this world, they come into the world like blank computers. You know how you buy a computer and when you first plug it in and you start putting stuff in it, it's not programmed. It doesn't have anything on it. So you don't know, it doesn't know anything. All it knows is what you put in it. All it knows is the input. Now, the operating system is its natural way of doing things. But like you all know, as you begin to enter information into that computer, it begins to behave in the ways that you want it to behave. That is how computers operate. It will do what you tell it to do. And if you don't do certain things with it, it'll never understand what those things are unless you tell it to do that. So it's kind of the same way when we're raised as children, and the same way we raise our own children. We bring them into the world and we begin to teach them things and we bring them into certain understandings. Now, some of those understandings are not verbal. We tell our kids a lot of things. They don't necessarily listen because we all know it's a don't do as I do, do as I say. But we all know that kids mimic us. So if we behave the way that we shouldn't and our children see that, then, of course, a lot of times they're going to operate in that same manner. So I'm going to get back to Quaker Oats here. So Aunt Jemima has been removed from the Quaker Oats line. The name and the image or likeness of the big black mammy is no longer. And we all know that's been a long time coming. That should have been gone. That should have been gone decades ago. Probably should have never been even presented. But it's a brand that's familiar to people and has been for a very long time. But it's a funny thing. I remember when I was a kid, how, sometimes, and this goes back to what I said about being programmed, how we all used to make jokes. And we might say something about, I remember it was, it was one thing we used to say, ain't your mama on the pancake box. We used to think that was funny as a child. But it was a dig, It was the dozens. It was talking about somebody's mama. Ain't your mama on the pancake box? Ain't your mama. And these are some of the ways that we're conditioned. You know, you say stuff like that, you think it's funny when you're a kid. Well, anyway, here we are with the conditioning that we believe that saying things like black on black crime somehow is a smart thing to say. Why, I have no idea. When we begin to trumpet or regurgitate our oppressor's language, all it does is feed into their dehumanization of a people of color. We must be very, very careful about how we regurgitate the language of our oppressors. We do it quite often. You got to listen, because what you think you're hearing, see, they say these things like, oh, you should feel this way and you should act that way. You need to remind these people when they tell you how you should think and act that they don't have a right until the day they turn black to be able to tell you how you should feel about their oppression. They don't get to do that. That's got to stop. But in order for it to stop, you have to take a stand against that sort of behavior. And remember that when they talk, sometimes it is in code. And you got to understand code. Don't think that they just pulled that rabbit out of their ass and they didn't mean anything by it. See, that's the mistake we make. Now, we can overlook it. I'm not saying you got to respond to everything. Everything that somebody says or does doesn't require a retort. However, when you decide to, make sure that it is clear that your position is solid and you clearly understand the code that is being spoken. That means you have to become a code breaker. Now, they have decided to remove the dehumanizing and racist branding from their packaging, which I am, for one, glad to see. I hope, and I've heard, I don't know how true it is, but I've heard that Uncle Ben's is next. We need to get rid of that. Check this out, y'all. So today, it appears that the officer who shot Rayshard Brooks in the back has been formally charged. Him and his accomplice have been charged. Now, at first, I didn't think that the other officer probably should get charged because I didn't really see him do anything that I thought warranted charges. Well, I was wrong. And, one thing that stands out to me in my mind about this case, mainly, Tina Steele, you exactly right. That fragility, that YT fragility. You're absolutely correct. But check this out. So every birthday that Rayshard Brooks' daughter has, for the remainder of her life, she will have the remembrance that her father died on that day. I think that is a hell of a thing to have to deal with. I think that's something that no one is taking into account at this point. And it is very disturbing to me because I can't imagine that every single year of my birthday that I have to remember that my father was murdered on that day. That's a hell of a thing. Now, they laid out the case today about why the charges that they had came down. And I was actually a bit shocked about the whole thing. And well, let me not say shocked, because shocked that's strong. I knew the charges were going to come for Officer Rolfe because he's the shooter. But I was a little surprised by the other charges, and I actually was surprised about the level of the charges, because y'all know when we talked about the George Floyd case, and I was pretty clear about why the charges that they put on them were accurate. A lot of people want to see them charged with first-degree murder and this and that. While I am not a lawyer, and I make no claim to know what is exactly in the statutes or the laws, particularly those of Minneapolis or Minnesota, but I do know that anything more than a second-degree murder charge would not be prosecuted. Why? Because you have to prove those charges beyond a reasonable doubt as the state. See, y'all got to remember, we talking about the police. It's not guilty until proven innocent like it is with black people. With them, it actually operates the way that it's supposed to. Innocent until proven guilty. So, in that case, you have to be able to prove a charge beyond a reasonable doubt in order for a person to be prosecuted in that way. So, a second degree is a provable charge in my mind in that particular case. Now, as it pertains to Rayshard Brooks, it turns out that, and Dennis, we're going to get to that in 1 second. Dennis says the fellow cop turned witness. Oh, I got a whole bunch for you on that one. As it pertains to Rayshard Brooks, the officer who did the shooting, Officer Rolfe, it appears that he has 11 charges. And his accompanying officer, his accomplice, has a total of 7 charges. Oh, I think it's 3. I'm sorry. 3 charges, 3 or 4. Anyway, here's something that I bring up because we talk about why these things happen. And I said, and y'all remember me saying right after this happened, I said this was purely an ego-driven shooting. It had nothing to do with any of them feeling like their life was in danger. Proof that this was an ego shooting, or as I've heard it called in similar incidents like this, like George Floyd. This is murder porn. Murder pornography. You don't want to look, but you don't want to look away. Proof that this was an ego-driven shooting. After shooting Brooks, Rolfe said, "I got him." What? Wait, hold up. I got him. Bruh, is this a video game? What you doing? What are we playing? This is not a game. That's a man's life. He said, "I got him." Now, check this out. They got that information from Officer Bronson. He is the one who told the story and explained the events that took place, or should I say, the conversations that took place. Brosnan, I'm sorry, I said Bronson. His last name is Brosnan. Devin Brosnan and Garrett Rolfe. Brosnan told the investigators that Rolfe, after saying, "I got him," then turned around and kicked him. We were fortunate enough that enough people with video cameras were on the scene, and they literally have a photo of Officer Rolfe's foot in the air as he's about to kick. Taken from the videotape now, as he's about to kick Rayshard Brooks after he shot him now. If that's not ego, I don't know what is. I mean, he felt like, hey, you got the best of me. Y'all, you see, you got to remember, none of this is funny, but let's keep it 100. Dude, when they knocked on his window, he was dead sleep drunk, right? Let me not even say he was drunk, because we have to be, let's say he was allegedly inebriated, because we don't know if he was drunk, to be honest with you. All we know is what the officer said. He claimed he was drunk. Okay, fine. So here's a guy who they knocked on the window, and apparently the 911 tape showed that the young lady who was the manager, I guess, of the store had attempted to go out and wake him up a couple of times, and he never woke. He woke up and went back to sleep, so she called the police because he wouldn't get up and get out of her drive-through line. Well, when the police got there, he was still asleep, obviously with his foot on the brake, and he tapped on the window and woke him up, and then he fell back to sleep. After seeing the police, he was awakened again. Now, I'm only telling you this because I want to make sure you understand the state that this man was in. So he finally wakes up enough. The cop tells him, which I question. If you wake somebody up in a parking lot that's supposedly passed out drunk, as they say, as the officers alleged, why would you tell him to move his vehicle in any capacity whatsoever? Because if he's inebriated, he shouldn't be moving the vehicle at all. That was the first mistake. Now, he parks his car and tries to get out to talk to the officers. They want him to sit there. He finally gets out. He gets out of the vehicle and they begin their interrogation, if you will. Now, after all this talking, which lasted, almost an hour, 45 minutes, finally, they go to handcuff him. Oh, and by the way, one of those charges is because they did not notify him why he was being arrested before they attempted to put the cuffs on him. That's actually against policy. So he gets up, snatches away from the officers as they attempt to put cuffs on him. A scuffle ensues, and he gets the best of both of them. Even takes one of their tasers. Now let's remember, this man is supposed to be inebriated and under the influence. So you can only imagine Officer Rolfe having to go back to the good old boy shop with the rest of his fellow officers and explain how one drunk man beat two officers' ass, took their taser and ran. He didn't want to have to explain that. His ego got the best of him. So when Mr. Brooks took off running, he figured, I'm going to get him. And as soon as he did, and you could see him reaching for his sidearm as he was running, he pulled his weapon and he shot Mr. Brooks twice in the back. One in the buttocks, one in the middle back, in which several organs, from what I understand, were damaged because one of them hit him in the ass. The other one hit him in his lower back. And the bleed out occurred. Now, check this out. The crazy thing is, now, Ms. Walker, I'm gonna take your comment. You say he wasn't that drunk. He probably lied about the breath test. Let me say this much. I did see the body cam of the officer who initiated the breathalyzer test, and that would have been Officer Rolfe. And it did say on there 0.108, which is above the legal limit. And I did see the body cam footage before any of that. So I'm just going by what the legal limits are and what I saw myself on the video. And if we're going to go by video, we got to go by all of it. And it did say 0.108, which is over the legal limit for his weight in the state of Georgia. Now, this officer then started reaching for his sidearm as he was running, chasing a man who he had already patted down, had not been out of his sight, who he already knew didn't have a weapon, and was running with his back turned to him. So that means a person that's running away from you, and I can tell you this from my own experience, is not a threat, not according to the law. According to the law, a person who is fleeing from you is no longer considered a threat. So, as he ran away, dude's ego just exploded. It blew up. His ego got huge. Nope, you ain't getting away. Shot him in the back, goes over to him, kicks him, and then says, I got you. Or I got him, according to Officer Brosnan. And then Officer Brosnan proceeds to put his foot on the back of Mr. Brooks, basically standing on his back, which he admitted to, which, according to Atlanta Police Department, that is considered unauthorized weaponless control technique. And it is absolutely against Atlanta Police Department policy. So he broke rank right there. And that actually is one of his charges. It is considered assault. So he is faced with that, along with several charges of breach of oath of office. Because, we got to remember, I think a lot of these officers forget that they are civil public servants, and they must take an oath of office to tell the truth and do the right thing when they're in that uniform, wearing that badge, and carrying that sidearm. They are bound by law to do so. The problem is there's not been enough checks and balances in place ever to adhere, or should I say apply those laws to them, because they will not police themselves. So the other problem is this. After they shot him, walked on his back, then they would not or did not provide any medical aid to this dying man for over 2 minutes after they shot him. Now, a witness said that their demeanor after the shooting didn't reflect any fear or danger of Mr. Brooks, but reflected other kinds of emotions. Now, you got to remember, there was a lot of people out there. Now, when I say there was a lot of people out there, when you go back and you look at either the photographs or the video, you will notice that in the line of fire, when he fired his weapon because he ran into a car before he shot him. I'm speaking of Officer Roth. He ran into the vehicle, dropped his taser. Oh, and by the way, one of the other charges is that, and I didn't know this, you can't fire a taser at a fleeing suspect. I didn't know that. I thought that was fair game. Well, you learn something new every day. Turns out that when he shot, when the other officer, well, that was, when he fired his taser at him, he violated there too. That's another charge. Now, when he shot his sidearm, his gun, he fired 3 rounds. 2 of them hit Mr. Brooks in the back. The third shot, though, if you look at those pictures or that video, you'll see a white SUV directly in the line of fire to Mr. Brooks. As it turns out, one of those rounds did go into that vehicle, hit it in the lower area behind the wheel on the bumper. Now, if that's the case, now you've put other people's lives in danger. You discharged your firearm in a crowded parking lot where there were obviously families and individuals who had nothing to do with this situation. So now he has 2 more counts of aggravated assault. Because of that bullet hitting their vehicle, you put their lives in jeopardy in your irresponsible action and discharge of a firearm in a crowded place. I don't care that you have a badge. And there's another charge. So Brosnan has 2 or 3 counts of breach of oath of office and an aggravated assault. Now, Rolfe, on the other hand, is a little more complicated because although he has all these other charges to go with him, he also has felony murder. Now, WB Reese says they will sue PD. Brother, let me tell you something. Atlanta finna go bankrupt fooling with this case. These people get ready to have to spend so much money on these lawsuits, man. It's going to be unreal. Unbelievably real. And let me tell you, that family's lawyers, oh, them boys ain't nothing to play with. That dude is a beast. All right. So, check this out, though. The felony murder charge that Officer Rolfe, let me stop saying officer. Let me say Mr. Rolfe, because he's no longer an officer. He is now he's about to be an inmate. Inmate Rolfe has a felony murder charge now. That particular charge in the state of Georgia carries a sentence of, these are the sentences now: life in prison, life without parole, or the death penalty. That is what Officer Rolfe has to look forward to. Aside from the other charges, which I'm sure, if convicted, will run concurrently to the felony murder charge. Let me tell you what y'all can expect. 9 times out of 10, he's going to try to probably plea that down. He's not going to get away from this scot-free. He is going to do some time, and I think he knows that. So far, the district attorney has asked for a $50,000 bond for former Officer Brosnan and a no bond for former Officer Rolfe. Now, here is the twist. Apparently, Officer Brosnan had initially agreed that he would turn state's evidence against Officer Rolfe. Now, y'all know that's unprecedented, right? We do know something like that doesn't happen. Well, within the last hour, apparently, his lawyers have spoken up and made the statement that he is not turning state's witness and that he does not intend to plead guilty. And I'm guessing, and this is what I'm guessing, Officer Brosnan probably, because at first, he was on administrative duty and on leave or whatever, but I'm guessing that he's probably unemployed tonight. Well, I'm also guessing, these are just guesses, we don't know for sure, but I'm guessing that Officer Brosnan has probably received multiple phone calls at this point because of his agreeance to turn state's witness against a fellow former officer. And I'm thinking that they're backtracking now because 9 times out of 10, he's probably been threatened. You agree on the one hand, because I'm sure he's trying to save his own ass. But I'm thinking that now someone else probably told him, you're putting your family in jeopardy, you're putting your life in jeopardy, and you're putting the jeopardy of police officers all over the country in jeopardy. So check this out. This is where it's taking me to with a lot of this. I want to first say, and what I'm going to talk about now is the things that are wrong with this system. And the first thing is the title of this stream, the celebration of charges. We should not have to be sitting on pins and needles every time one of these situations happen. First of all, they shouldn't be happening. But we shouldn't have to sit on pins and needles every single time, hoping that the right charges come, if any, and then whether or not the prosecution is going to be effective and accurate or done properly. I think that it's a travesty, and it just shows you the level of dysfunction that's within the legal system and in policing, and why it needs reform so badly in this country. It is tragic. We do not and should not have to celebrate the charges levied against lawbreakers. The only reason they are allowed to get away with what they do is because they wear that badge. And I got some stuff to say about that too. Now, Tony Bowen, because they already know they're going to get off. No, they're not getting off, Tony. Let me tell you. Let me tell you like this. In this particular case, I will go out on a limb and say, and having lived in Atlanta for 10 years, I can tell you, ain't gonna happen, bruh. They ain't getting away with nothing. Atlanta is a city where black folks decisively make decisions, are a decisive factor in politics and in lifestyles in that city. Atlanta's a very, very, it is a place where justice will be served no matter who you are or what your color is. I am confident that they will be convicted. The evidence is clear. The videos are clear. And unless they're going to come up with some bombshell out of nowhere that explains their actions, it ain't going to happen. Anyway, now, when we talk about an officer who has even hinted that he's going to help to prosecute a fellow officer, that's something we haven't seen ever, at least not me. I don't know about the rest of you, but I've never seen it before. Now, I doubt very soon. When I first heard it, my initial thought was, I don't know that he's that bold. See, we got to remember something. Now, yesterday, many of you may know, I went before the City Council and Commission on Police Reform here in San Antonio. And one of the things that I brought up specifically about this is that, unfortunately, good officers are often bullied. They can't do their job effectively. They can't hold other officers to account, not in public, and not in a way that makes them criminal or appear criminal to others. That within itself is an issue, because if the police can't police themselves, how is it that we should trust them to police us? I told that council on yesterday that I have made the statement that there are no good officers. And I explained why. Let me be clear. Anytime, and I've got plenty of officer friends, and I'm going to keep it 100 like I always do, there may be a few on here. Let me be very clear. If you stand by and you watch another officer break the law, break policy, destroy lives just because they can, and not do the right thing, you sit idly by and do nothing and not say a word, you are a bad officer. And you are a part of the problem, not the solution. Until police officers grow a pair and decide to do what is been suggested by inmate Brosnan, then the system can never be repaired. This is a precedent that we have never seen. Let's look at let's think about what it would look like if this officer, I'm sorry, I keep doing that, inmate, if this inmate, let's look at what it would look like if he did testify against this other inmate. Let's say he says, yes, I was on the scene and I believe that the actions taken by Officer Rolfe at the time were wrong, improper, and I didn't agree with it, or whatever he needs to say. Let's say he said that in open court, and he then provided the prosecution with enough evidence or information to help convict Officer Rolfe. Not only would that be unprecedented, it would put very severe cracks in the blue wall of silence, which then would allow the system to begin to operate the way that it should. There would then be a new level of checks and balances in place that would keep other officers from breaking bad. Here's why. If I don't know that you are going to tell on me or not tell on me, the likelihood of me doing something I ain't got no business doing is very, very small. Police officers, one of their greatest fears is IAD. That's their internal investigation departments. If an officer knew that he was going to catch hell if he did the wrong thing, the likelihood of him doing the wrong thing would lessen incredibly. If he knew that when he broke the law or broke some suspect's jaw when he shouldn't have, that the other officer would hold him to account and even arrest him, he wouldn't do it. If he knew he was going to get thrown under the bus, he wouldn't do it. Even if he suspected it. You're putting your whole career on the line. You're putting your livelihood, your life, and your family on the line. But here's the problem. Other officers who have a problem with stopping these types of things create more of a problem. See, we could talk about legislation all day. Because like I said on yesterday, in front of a council, talk is cheap. I mean, you can put it on paper, it look good. But in reality, the problem that you have is that you have to make the men, you have to look toward the hearts and the minds of the individuals that are supposed to be operating in a legal and moral capacity. That's a tough road to hoe, baby. You're not going to just change the minds of men. You're not going to change the hearts of men. You're not going to do it. If this officer had not backed out of saying that he would turn state's witness, what you would be watching was what would finally look like a sort of an equal application of the law. Because it would be more like, how many of us have been to court or had friends that have been to court, and the prosecutor comes by and he offers you a plea deal or some sort of a charge down so that you can plead guilty, but you get to go home, or, you know, you get a lesser amount of time, still got a felony on you. But they want to plea it down so you can feel like, well, if I take my chances, I'm going to get 50 years. But if I plea it down, I'm only going to do 10. See, the system is unfair right off the top. But now, in a case like this, if that officer placed himself in what we know would be harm's way, this would be a fair case of, it ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun. That alone would keep officers from doing a lot of the stuff that they do. So it's unfortunate that this is what we're dealing with. But I must say this. I'm optimistic. I really am. I'm very, very optimistic right now because we've seen so many things take place that are we've never seen before when it comes to law enforcement. I ain't gonna lie, y'all. I'm excited about where we're headed. I know, and it's a bad thing to say. I hate to say it. I know that we are going to visit this topic again very, very soon because there are still a whole lot of overzealous, ego-driven, testosterone-filled officers ripping and running up and down our city streets who think that all of this that's going on is ridiculous. Which brings me to my next point. They believe that this stuff is ridiculous. A lot of them. Here's the problem. If these officers are complaining and willing to quit their jobs, and how many times have we seen over the last, I guess, couple of weeks where officers have quit working in the SWAT teams or the emergency response team, them guys up in New York and Buffalo. When you have an officer that's willing to quit doing their job because they can't do what they have been doing, it makes you wonder. They're angry about being held accountable? What's wrong with this picture? What's the problem? You know something is wrong when a cop is angry because he can't get away with wrongdoing. If you was doing your job the way you're supposed to be doing it in the first place, why be mad? If you were doing what you were supposed to be doing as a police officer and you didn't do things that would come into question, why would you be mad? That's a sad state of affairs, but this is where we are. You got to ask yourself about the mental capacity, the psychological state that these officers are in. It's a bad place to be, if you ask me. So that brings me to another point. I want to talk about these officers who believe that they are protected by the blue wall of silence. First of all, let's remember that officers of color have always been discriminated against as long as there's been policing. But the first thing you got to think about and remember, and a lot of people don't know, this is the history lesson, is that policing began as slave patrols. And now it's time for my shameless plug. Inside the Black Factor, you will find parts about that, where the police, sheriff departments, and things that govern us today are all products and byproducts of slavery. Now, you got to understand that police officers were not given the amount of power that they have now, probably up until the last, maybe 30, 40 years. Policing has been an all-white thing. The only reason they hired black police officers in particular areas during certain times was because they were to police black areas. A black cop during certain periods of history, all the way up into almost the 70s, better not dare think about trying to arrest a white man. And then you have, I heard a story of, even in Atlanta, up until I believe it was in the 70s or 80s or 70s, might have been a little bit longer than that. The police officers who were there, the first, I think it was 8 black police officers who couldn't even change their clothes in the police station and had to change at the YMCA because the white officers didn't want them there. My point is this. Black officers, like many black people, the footstools of some of the oppressors. I almost said a name. Many of you all know the name that I won't say, who is has an awful lot to say, a very vocal individual who it looks, let me stop. I'm trying real hard to be politically correct. I have a very mixed crowd, and I really don't, y'all know me. Anyway, when you get these sorts of individuals, the kind Malcolm X talk about, the ones that you get to parade, that the white folks go and find to parade in front of black people and say that they speak for black folks, like that band of idiots Trump got, all these so-called ministers and all these people that's supposed to love him so much that, and then Ben Carson, and they're supposed to be the spokespersons for black people, which we all know. I don't know nobody black that has anything good to say about any of them. But these are the ones that they go and find to parade in front of white people to continue to perpetuate the myth, the BS, the lies, the oppression that they use, that we often, unfortunately, regurgitate for their pleasure and benefit, so that we can allow them to maintain their fragility. These are the ones they use. And in police departments, this very same behavior is practiced. They use these black officers and they place them in areas that allow a certain level of disrespect to their own people to take place. And as I believe it was Ice Cube in one of his songs, he said, using the black cop to show out for the white cops so that they can jump up there and showboat and act a fool and do what they do. And now, and I'm not just making this up. I want y'all to remember one thing about everything you see that I say on these shows. Don't ever believe me. I will say things, a lot of what you hear me say are things that I've learned and stuff that I repeat, things that I've read, things that I've seen. But I want you to always remember, one thing I ain't going to do on here is lie to you. And I'm not going to make up nothing. Anything I say, I want you to look it up. I want you to do the homework for yourself. I want to plant a seed, and I want you to let it grow within you. I want you to see the things that I say. I'm not blowing smoke, baby. I don't do that. So I'm saying this to say that these officers, and here's proof. A few years ago, there was an officer who encountered an assailant, or whatever he was called, a suspect, and the man appeared to resist, as it's always said that we're doing, because you always hear the officer say, you ever watch cops or them other shows that stop resisting, stop resisting, stop resisting. You could be sitting there with your hands up and they'll say stop resisting. Why? Because it sounds good on body cam. Because it sounds good on radio if they got their mic open. So that when they kill you, which we've seen happen multiple times, they'll say he was resisting and I was in fear of my life. I was in fear of my life. This is the lie they've been taught. The reason I know about this lie that they've been taught is because someone taught me that lie. I remember when I got my very first concealed carry permit many years ago, long before permits were a big popular thing like they are now. In fact, when I got my permit so long ago, you actually had to write a letter to the sheriff to explain why you wanted one. And then you had to go and buy a surety bond. You had to have insurance. You had to do a bunch. You had to jump through 9,000 hoops to get a carry permit back in them days. Now it ain't that hard. It's just simple. But when we took that class, in that class, the state's attorney is the one who gave the written class. And he told us, let me tell you exactly what he did. He walked over to the center of the room and he sat down an empty chair. And he said to the entire class, and there were blacks and whites in there alike, he said, "What is this?" And everybody kind of looked around and they said, "It's a chair." He said, "No." He said, "It's an empty chair." Oh, okay. So as he began to talk about the empty chair, he said to us, "This, if you ever have to shoot someone, this is what you leave me as a prosecutor." Now remember, this is the district attorney teaching this class. He said, "This is what you want to leave me in court." Why? Why? Because if you have to shoot someone and they are not there to tell their side of the story, it's your word against theirs. That was one of the first things I learned. If they're teaching that to me as a civilian, as a citizen, can you imagine what they're teaching to these police officers? Now, that only takes us to try and understand, or to understand, what these officers deal with on a daily basis. The problem is when they get to a point where this becomes fun and games, it's like a big video game to them. And they are going to rip and run up and down, and they're having fun, chasing guys down, caving their heads in, you know. I mean, you know, people think it's a joke, but hell, back in the day, one thing you could count on, especially all my people that are on this feed that have ever lived in the city of Chicago like I have, particularly my gang members, ex-gang members, people who are affiliated, we all understand one thing. If the police caught you doing one thing or another, they're going to grab you up. They'll put you in the squad. You might catch a couple of headshots, and they'll take you to somebody else's neighborhood and let you out. Because they know, and then they're going to let them other cats, they're going to ride you around so they can see you. And then they're going to let you out. And they're going to let you out right in front of a lot of your enemies. Why? Because you already know what's coming next. You're going to catch a pumpkin head. But see, back in them days, cats wasn't out here busting guns like they do now. Everybody wasn't shooting each other. You probably get your ass whooped. But that was pretty much going to be the extent of it. We had in Chicago a police captain who was known for torturing people, who, after retirement, and all of these things were found out, you know, a lot of people got let out of jail behind him when they found out the truth about him. But he still got his pension. He still got paid. He still got, you know, treated. And, you know, man, okay. See, he should have been locked up for the crimes he committed. He was a criminal. But that blue wall, that's a strong wall. That wall got to come down. It's coming down. We are in an unprecedented time. And people in this country are tired. They've had enough. These fellow officers who protect one another, my black officers need to understand. When we had that gentleman, I don't remember what state it was, who thought he had a suspect in front of him, and he ended up shooting the man and killing him. His son was there with him. That cop got prosecuted, which at that time it was unprecedented that cops got prosecuted. Exactly, Dennis McCullum Burge. That was his name. Absolutely right. That was that cop's name who would torture people. They actually used to use, I don't know, some of y'all are not old enough, but they had them telephones with the crank telephones. They used to put wires on them things and they'd hook them to you and turn that crank. They had a building over there that they used to take people to. They used to do all kinds of stuff, man. It's the truth. But you know, it was unprecedented at the time when that officer got convicted of that crime. But it just goes to show you the double standard that's in place, and it still is alive and kicking today. Some of these black officers seem to think that they are protected by that blue wall, when in fact, if the time comes for someone to get thrown under the bus, we have seen it happen countless times to them. You can't get away with, as a black officer, what white officers get away with. I guarantee you, let a black officer shoot an unarmed white man, white child, Tamir Rice, playing with a toy gun, and watch how fast, watch out, boy, he gonna be looking like grease lightning. They're gonna lock him up so fast it's gonna make his head spin. But yet, these same officers protect who? See? See, this is what I'm talking about. You gone, baby. Yes, Poppy. The black cop in Minnesota that shot the white lady. There's another one. Gone. Got him. Burn him up. They didn't waste no time. But these same officers, these same black officers, walked that line to protect them. Massa, we sick. Massa, we sick. Man, y'all better wake up. I am happy that the mayor of Atlanta, Ms. Keisha Bottoms, has acted swiftly and decisively. Every other city in this country needs to take a lesson from this lady and her ability to lead and her lack of fear of reprisal. We need more of that from our leaders. We need more of that from the people who govern the places we live and keep us safe in our livelihoods. I applaud her. We need more like her. Speaking of leaders, let me close out this show talking about the Mango Maniac, because it appears that y'all's man has there's a new book out by John Bolton, who was his security. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Security dude. Anyway, national security. Anyway, he's throwing him under the bus. And of course, you know, his colleagues are saying, oh, it's all a lie. It's fake news, fake news. Nothing anybody ever says bad about this clown apparently is real, according to them, his cult members. But apparently it appears that he tried to make a deal with Xi Jinping in China to help him to win his election. And in case anybody doesn't know, that is unconstitutional as hell. You can't even have that conversation. But of course, there are witnesses. And it's been pointed out that in the impeachment, they didn't look where they needed to look to get what they needed to actually impeach him. And all of this apparently is in this new book. So he is once again being thrown under the bus by his former, the people who have worked in and around him and the White House over the last 3.5 years. So, Brother Quake, I see you. Thank you for checking in, sir. I want to thank everyone else. Your book will be en route here pretty quick. I'm waiting on a new shipment because sales have been fantastic because you have all chipped in and bought a book and supported me, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so very much.
I was going to say, you going to talk about farmers or whatever.
Yeah. Well, on the Trump thing, the part of the reason what he told Xi Jinping was that he wanted him to buy more produce from the farmers here in America. And I guess he did. And if you remember, he had a deal on the table. He never said what the details of the deal were. He had a deal on the table for them to buy more products from America. Well, the question now becomes, what was the caveat? What was the reason, or what was Xi Jinping going to actually do? Well, we know what he was going to do. What was Trump going to do for him? What was the quid pro quo? We don't know. At least I don't know. I guess I got to read the book. But the point is, too much dirty dealing across the waters. First it was Russia, and then it was China. He loved China so much. It's a problem. This dude is treasonous as hell, Dennis McCullum. Absolutely right. Treasonous as hell. But this is what had been elected into office in this country. So I'm going to repeat what I always say. November is coming. Let me put this little shout out to all my people who don't vote. I need y'all to do me a favor. Just go vote anyway. Just do it and say this vote is actually for Brian Forbes. This ain't me voting. I still don't believe in voting. I'm just doing him a favor. So go do that for me and let me know how that turned out. And also let me announce I got a new sponsor coming on board next week, and we're going to be advertising her products, and she's got some really good stuff too, y'all. And y'all don't forget my girl Tara, Royalty LLC in the building. Great teas. These are fantastic, y'all, man. Y'all, I'm telling you, if you over 50, get the Marigold. It's great for inflammation to make you feel better. Trust me, I'm speaking from experience, you dig? Also, like I said, don't forget to get your copy of The Black Factor. You can get them on my website, bmforbes.com. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel or my Twitter. I'm sorry, my Twitter and my Twitch. My Twitch. Sign up to my... Don't forget to sign up. You can sign up to Twitch, and you don't have to watch me on Facebook. You can always check me out on Twitch. Check me out on YouTube. That's BM Forbes on YouTube or The Black Factor on Twitch at any time, because you can check out all the old shows. Any of the shows that you might have missed, they're all on Twitter. I keep saying Twitter. They're all on YouTube. And also, don't forget to share. Share all of this stuff. Share it all, y'all. And last but not least, I'm gonna throw a little plug in for myself right quick, because on yesterday, for many of you, I went on. I was in front of the city council here for this commission meeting. I'm just let y'all check a little bit of that out right quick, just for fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, the community trust is broken as it applies to law enforcement. It's not our job as citizens alone to repair the problems that have become apparent, or have been apparent to many of us for a very long time. It's just that now we're having the opportunity to see it up close.
The book author and public speaker made his way to the Bexar County Courthouse Tuesday to speak to county commissioners about best practices law enforcement should use in the community.
It's the best time, a better time than it's ever been, for us to try and put as much information in front of them so that they can make better decisions that affect the overall public and make life better for everybody in each city.
It's knowledge and information Forbes shares daily on his video podcast.
Nowadays, discretion apparently has become a thing of the past.
As Forbes continues to speak for change, he hopes others too find a way to protest for equality.
I believe that without the people with the signs that are wearing out shoe leather, without the people who are willing to stand in front of the commission, and that's from one extreme to the other, we don't have a movement. It has to happen from all sides.
It's a rebirth of the 1960s civil rights movement that's calling for equal justice still today in 2020.
Power concedes nothing without demand. And until the people stand in demand, you'll get nothing. No one with power is willing to just give it away. That's not how this works. You have to take it. And if this is what it looks like, then so be it.
We have Chris Grisby with
All
us
right,
now for
y'all.
more on this
So
story.
I just
Chris,
wanted to give you
Bear
that little
County
bit of
Sheriff
little
Hunter
tidbit
Thomas
of
also talked to the board.
what we had going on yesterday. I can't make the thing stop. So anyway, yeah. So I just want to let everybody know, man, I appreciate y'all. Your support makes it easy for me to keep going. It is important to me to try as hard as I can to convey messages of hope, to give people a little bit of drive. I want others to pick up where some behind you may have left off. Everybody has a job to do. We all can do our part. Remember that power concedes nothing without demand, and each and every one of us must stand together as we make our demands and have a collective understanding of what it is that we need and demand it. That's how you get change. Without that, we get nothing. We get what we've been getting, and we keep getting officers that may one day cause any of this to visit your doorstep. And that we do not want. So, with all of that said, y'all, it's my time. I appreciate you all. Love you to death. Love, peace, and chicken grease, y'all.